everyone, and welcome to the new According to Tradition podcast with me, Father Michael, and with Subdeacon Nectarios. And God willing, hopefully this will become a long-running series and one that will hopefully be profitable for everyone who listens. So before we begin with today's topic, I'd like to give Subdeacon Nectarios a chance to introduce himself and maybe tell us a little bit about himself, his background.
Yes, Father Bless, first off, nice to be here with you. So, I'm sure some of you already know me. I work for Orthodox Ethos. I'm one of the researchers and editor. I just finished one of their latest publications on Metropolitan Philaret, the Metropolitan Philaret of New York, the Zealous Confession for the Faith. I'm sure that you've seen that around. And I have my own website now, Orthodox Traditionalist.com, where I'm posting all these new and interesting things that's going on in our world here and in the Orthodox world. So I'm sure most of you already know me, so there's not too much to say.
Yeah. Maybe some of us are more aware when we've been keeping up with what's going on in the online world and with of course with Uncut Mountain Press and its publications, and of course we're going to talk a little bit about that book today, and more so the relevance of its content and why it's so important for us to know who Metropolitan Philaret is and what he taught. As for me, a lot of you will know me, of course, from the Living Orthodox channel that this is being broadcast from. My name is Father Michael or Father Michael. I'm an Orthodox priest ordained last May, and actually Subdeacon Nectarios was at the ordination. It was also the day we buried Metropolitan Philaret. And so I got to meet Subdeacon Nectarios and Father Peter in person. It was a great time. I think my video it's just StreamYard. All right, so on today's podcast, and what I think, really the nature of the show is it's more of a no-holds-barred discussion on some of the issues that we're having, maybe even getting into some of the history behind the issues that we see in the church. In particular, in this episode, and probably in many episodes to come, we're going to be addressing the pan-heresy of ecumenism and why it is such a soul-destroying, dangerous heresy that subtracts from the truth in favor of a very humanist-centered approach to the church, which is mostly just based on feelings and disguising it up as love. But this isn't what love really is, of course. So, of course, before we begin any further, please like, share, and subscribe to the video and to the channel. And, please feel free to leave comments or suggestions on topics you'd like us to cover in future videos. We're also going to be, covering a wide range of things that hopefully will be edifying for everyone listening. Now, another thing I want to quickly mention is that Subdeacon Nectarios has a website as well called orthodoxtraditionalist.com. So please check that out. It's a really good blog. Everything's really well researched because that's what he does. He does research. He knows history. He's good at digging up things and writing incredible articles that really help lay out a much more comprehensive landscape of what's happening in the church. So kind of the first things we were wanting to talk about this week was, of course, some news that made the rounds on social media. I'm not on Facebook anymore, but I saw the screenshot. I think it was you and a few other people who shared it around on some of our Telegram chats. And it was, in particular, a certain online personality known as Sister Vasa from Coffee with, Sister Vasa. There's a lot of issues to unpack there. So, in this photo, we see Sister Vasa approaching Pope Franco, and calling him the Holy Father, and asking his blessing, kissing his hand. So what is something we should really look at with this? What is one thing we'd like to maybe communicate about the issue with what we're seeing here being carried out by, in all reality, someone who's at least trying to portray themselves as a monastic online, blatantly, just flouting the holy canons. What would your take on this be, Subdeacon?
It's very problematic. I mean, we do she's a nun, but the worst thing about that is she actually is a Rochefort nun. She is in the Russian Church abroad. That's not like, I'm not. I know some people had they didn't like how I kind of said self-proclaimed. What I should have said is she self-identifies as, so she is a tantra monastic. She's a tantra monastic. She walks around in cassock all the time. She identifies herself with ecclesiastical title, nun, sister, what have you. I mean, so it's problematic. So when people, especially inquirers and catechumens, are like, well, she's an Orthodox nun in Rokor, so she must be, whatever she's doing must be fine. So she's de facto representing Rokor. And obviously, if anyone knows Rokor history and what we're all about, that's what we're not about. I mean, we've had our St. Philaret, the first hierarch of Rokor in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. He wrote extensively against this. And what's more problematic is that she knows better. I mean, she's not a stupid woman. She's a very intelligent woman. She has a PhD from one of the most prestigious universities in Europe. She was a doctoral assistant, graduate assistant. So she basically taught at the university. So she knows what she's doing. I mean, and when people see this, it's just, they're like, well, she's doing it. It must be fine. Rokor must be okay with this. I mean, that's the worst thing about it. And it's not just that. I mean, if you look at her social media pages, she's going to these papist masses publicly. So I mean, she's violating canon, canons left and right, openly, without consequence.
And more recently, of course, Canon 32 of Laodicea, with her kissing the hand of the Pope, which states that I believe it says that the blessings of heretics are actually curses.
Yeah, I mean, according to the translation, either depending on the translation, but in a nutshell, yeah, it's not a blessing. I mean, the Pope's been anathematized. I mean, over and over again. I mean, just it's inexcusable.
And I mean, there's a lot of problems that, of course, because it's a lot of people go, oh, why can't we just have union? Why can't we just get along? It's not about getting along. It's not about anything humanistic in that sense. I mean, that's one thing Saint Justin Popovich talks about a lot is the danger of humanism replacing what the church is. And that is, it's meant to be centered on the theanthropos. It has a theandric culture, not a humanistic culture. And the problem with humanism is that it inevitably leads to a form of atheism, in which man becomes the dictator of God's grace, God's will, His good, and that's not what the church does. I mean, we've never seen that at all in church history. When the church meets in council, of course, and comes to decisions on things, it's under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. There's a safety in the multitude of wise counselors, and so would it be maybe something that we could say in terms of how this is panning out and what we've seen in church history, with the movement, to be on the new calendar by the Greeks, and how that impacted the church, and now we're seeing, of course, this upcoming thing in 2025 with Pope Francis and Patriarch Bartholomew. Do you think maybe Sister Vasa doing this, unfortunately, might give some people the impression that this is credible, or that the Roman Catholic Church is maybe somehow possessing a form of grace? Because obviously this isn't the case. But what is some of the impact that you've seen with this online?
It's causing, what I've seen just online is it's causing a scandal. I mean, I think she's been around and she's been such a problem for so long that it's kind of, people don't expect, unfortunately, and this is just how it is, but people don't expect any less of her. But that doesn't make it any better.
So. When you got videos of you hanging out with Father James Martin, Jesuit, pro-gay.
Yeah, Jesuit. I suffered through one of her live stream. It was her podcast. It was like an hour long. She was with some layman that's a papist, and it was like an hour long, all about Catholicism. And it was she doesn't seem she knows what the church teaches. She knows what the saints say. She knows what the canon. She knows what's in the canons, but she doesn't care, and
Yeah.
that's what makes it so bad. But I mean,
Yeah, and that's been kind of the danger that I felt has been kind of happening online, is you get either these monastics who seem like her, who have no oversight, or if they do, it seems like nobody cares, and then you'll get lay people who are just, going right off the top of things and saying things that are blatantly, against the church, or attacks against certain aspects and members of the church, and yet, they don't disclose who gave them their blessing to do this. They don't, there's not really an open honesty there. And so I think with Sister Vasa, one of the biggest issues with this is that, for one, who's overseeing her? Who's really directing her spiritually?
well, I knew who she's within the European diocese, so we don't really have to. We could figure that out for ourselves. But who her mentor is, according to her own videos, is some papist priest that's a Jesuit.
So that's who her mentor is, and who she's getting direction from. So,
is it mentor? Is it a spiritual father? I don't know. I'm not in that dynamic to say, but according to her own video, she takes she's a mentee of a papist Jesuit, and we all know, if we've done any historical reading, what the Jesuits have done to the Orthodox Church. So
yeah, there's a long rap sheet there. Maybe you can just give a couple examples if you recall any off the top of your head. If not, that's fine. Like,
I mean, if you've ever read there's a book that I just finished again, Eustratio Argenti by form the Reposed Metropolitan Callistus, where it was published in '64, and in that book it covers the 16th century to 18th century, roughly, when the I want to say the beef between the Orthodox and the Latins was strongest, and the Jesuits were one of the main people that were just fueling that fire. They were getting a lot of Orthodox hierarchs to secretly, become papist and say, hey, come to the West and we'll teach you, we'll educate you, and then they'll become Catholic and they'll sign, a document becoming Catholic, a secret document that they'll send up to the Pope, but don't say anything to anybody. Go back to your diocese. And so, I mean, the Jesuits are subverting us.
They've always been kind of like the spear tip of some of the most aggressive papal expansions.
Yeah, they're just subversive. That's all they are. And
yeah, it's like they'll go into places. Like what happened in the Middle East, like even with around Antioch, and with the what do they call themselves, the Melkite Catholic Church. There was a lot of aggressive missionary work, a lot of it spearheaded by Jesuits, if I recall correctly. And the whole thing was, we'll offer a free education and all these wonderful things that you guys need out here, but you have to commemorate me, the Pope. You have to kiss the ring, kiss my slippers, and then free education for the children for the price of your soul, and it just brings to mind the words of our Lord when he says, what does it profit a man's soul a man if he should gain the world but lose his soul, right? And so of course, you understand that a lot of these people, of course, are maybe feeling certain pressures in their lives, wanting better lives for them and their children. But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, at what cost? Why are we putting the material and, something that is ephemeral over something that is eternal, right? And so I think that's a problem that a lot of the ecumenists struggle with, is they want that quick fix. They want that kind of, nice, easy breezy, let's just all get along, kumbaya session, but they want it at a cheap price. But at the same time, it's costing them something dear. It's a cheap move at the cost of their souls.
Yeah, I'm wondering why we keep allowing Orthodox clergy monastic to go to papist schools. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, just recently, I forgot that monk's name.
Without sharing details, I was counseling someone from Europe. I won't disclose the country. I just don't want to run the risk of making anyone feel outed or anything like that. But this person is looking at getting married with another Orthodox Christian. And of course, she was telling me this, and she said, well, what do we do for marriage prep? And I said, well, that's something that should be done with you and your priest, ideally. Talk with your parish priest, your spiritual father, whoever that is. And, that should be something that you guys work through before getting married. She goes, well, he told us to go to the Catholic Church and attend their premarital courses. And I said, are you kidding me? I'm sure he's a lovely man. I'm sure he is a God-fearing man. But at the same time, that's taking the easy way. It's almost like saying, I don't want to put in the work to prep you for marriage, so I'm going to hand you to someone else to do it, but I'm going to literally hand you to the wolves for it. And it's like, why are we being so undiscerning with this? Why would we do that? Or you'll get Orthodox priests saying that it's okay for lay people to pray with the heterodox, that canon only applies to clergy. But when you read the canons, and I mean, another plug for Uncut Mountain Press, which is, it's not like it's anything biased. It's just they put out books that we need.
Go read it.
On Common Prayer. Read
on
it.
Common
It's
Prayer. Sorry.
down.
On Common Prayer. Go read it.
On Common Prayer. And it's like right in here in On Common Prayer. If anyone who is a clergyman pray in company with a deposed clergyman, he shall be deposed too. Well, we're seeing that with schismatics.
This is right here, chapter 4.
Even in a private house with an excommunicated person, yes, this does include schismatics because they are not in communion with us, thus they're excommunicated.
Chapter 4.
Let him also be excommunicated. Right there, page 7. Page 7.
This is what I found the most interesting, is because I hear this a ton. I get like just recently I heard of, it happened close to home. We can do a memorial service for non-Orthodox. It's economy. No, it's not. Read chapter 4. It's not. You can't pray with the heterodox or for the heterodox in a liturgical setting.
It's a liturgical abuse, and you can't throw. It's to use the words of the Lord here. It's not right for us to give the dogs the children's food. And that's to say, these people are welcome to come to the table. They're welcome to become Orthodox. But we don't say things like Vichnaya Pamyat or memory eternal for the deceased heterodox. There was a whole thing with that with Pope Benedict XVI, and you'll get some people who argue, well, because Patriarch so and so said it's okay or said that, then it means it's okay. And my only problem with that is, are we becoming a micronized version of papist ourselves? When we just say, well, the bishops are infallible, are we being mini papist?
Essentially, I mean, if you look at if you read another plug for Uncut Mountain Press, but if you read Father's Ecclesiological Renovation, I mean, what that is, book. Well, the patriarch said, the bishop said, well, Nestorius was a patriarch too. So, I mean, just because we were a Catholic, it doesn't mean, when you're ordained to any level of the clergy, there's not like a mystical moment where your brain is filled with, doctrine that you shouldn't violate. It's not the Matrix.
Sometimes I really wish that was the case.
Probably easier, right. But that's not how it works.
No, that's the reality of this, guys. It's like, yes, we do receive grace in ordination. Every level of ordination has some bit of grace in it. Readers receive a grace. The subdeacons definitely receive more grace because they can touch certain things that the readers can't, with the blessing of a priest or a bishop. And of course, it just continues to go up. And yes, deacons, priests, and bishops have the grace and the authority to teach. It doesn't mean they always teach the right things. It doesn't mean they always teach things well. If what they're saying is not lining up with what the Holy Fathers have taught, with what Christ and the apostles have taught, then we've got a problem. And Christ never taught this notion of a fractured family tree of Christianity. His prayer in the garden when he prayed to the Father in the garden, his prayer was for us all to be one, as he and the Father are one. We're not one with the Protestants. We're not one with the papal Protestants. to take that term. I don't think Father Peter has trademarked that one yet. I don't think he has the copyright. It's a great term for them. I really think that describes it. They are really the first of the Protestants, and it makes sense because the Protestant Reformation came from them. It didn't come from us.
Mm-hmm.
People say, well, the Oriental Orthodox, yeah, but that was pre-schism. And so if you want to claim that the Pope has always been the supreme head of the church, then they're your problem.
Yeah.
They're your problem just as much as they're our problem. And really, they're none of our problems because they've removed themselves from the equation. They're cut off. And this is a huge issue we're seeing. I've seen OCA priest, one time when I was attending a church, give communion to Eritreans who are under the OO confession. He baptized and gave communion, and it's like, okay, well, I'm glad he baptized the kid, but I don't know what happened with the family. So I pray to God that there was some follow up there. I don't know. I really don't know. He's really decent guy, wonderful priest, but that was a huge mistake. But you can't blame some of these priests in the OCA and other places for making these mistakes when in their seminaries they're doing common prayer and praying with the monophysites.
Yeah, I covered that in my last article. Is that like the Metropolitan, I like to call him, as Saint Philaret said, the Metropolitan.
I think that'll be an episode that we'll dedicate to that issue too, because they kind of like to give us a little bit of flack and say that we schismed from them, but it's actually the other way around.
Yeah, it's the other way around. I mean, the
so Deacon Icarios, MA, history, major and researcher. So he can verify that. No, the OCA did not come first.
It's actually there's a book right here. It's hard to get, but I have it. Where is it? It's archived. These are all my anti-ecumenist books, so I'm not in short supply.
There's a lot of them, by the way, guys.
There's a lot of them.
You see all that? That's how much in the church is available for anti-ecumenism. I think the entire middle portion of my shelf behind my shoulder here is largely anti-ecumenistic and stuff about the dogma.
This book is The Truth About the Russian Church Abroad. This book is if you want to read a book about that whole period of the Russian history, and it was great because for a while Jordanville was giving it out for free. But this book, OCA, born out of schism, unfortunately. But the one thing I've learned just writing all these books is as an Orthodox Christian, you cannot, and I'll say just like Father Cosmas in Australia does, you cannot be stupid. You have to read. I see all these, well, I learned in Discord. Well, I learned on Telegram. That's not sufficient.
Yeah, that might be the starting point, but you can't just stop there.
That goes for clergy too. I'm not saying you have to go out and get a doctoral degree or anything, or even you don't even have to have a degree period. But if you're not constantly reading, you're not going to know that. The history of the church spans 2,000 to 23 years. It's extensive. So
it's huge. And full disclosure, guys, I don't have a degree. I took the CTS program through Holy Trinity Monastery in Jordanville, because where I'm in Canada, it was that or go to a really ecumenistic seminary east of where I live. And
I think I know that one.
Yeah, and they do liturgies with Anglicans, and I wasn't going there. And so I've had to depend on doing a lot of reading myself. I've cobbled together my own collection of different commentaries and books on Orthodox dogmatic theology. You can do this too. And there's stuff you can read for free online. I get so many people messaging me and asking me the same questions. And it's like, look, in the amount of time you took to write me a 2 or 3 paragraph email, as much as I'm happy to answer your questions, and I would love to answer them all, I have to honestly filter things. I'm in school full time. I have 2 young children and a wife. And I'm a priest, and I may be an assistant priest, but as a result, I'm actually often the one making the house calls for various things, because I have that ability to do that. And the rector, he's busy too. So, priests are busy people, whether they're full time or not. And you'll get a response from Google faster in the time that you've taken to write me a 3-paragraph email.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason why I get so many messages that I get is because the priests are constantly busy. So
Yeah.
subdeacon's perfect. It's like, right.
It's kind of just right there. Subdeacons should be knowledgeable. And if you're a subdeacon out there and you're watching this, yeah, you should be knowledgeable. You should make sure that you can answer tough questions. People are going to come up to you in your parish. They're going to see you wearing your cassock, and they're going to expect that you have answers. The moment you put this on, you put a target on your back.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, there's a lot to be learned.
There is. There absolutely is. No, and so when we're looking at what's happening with everything going on here, and with the fact that you'll see, I mean, again, kind of just some interesting news. I know, and I'm not going to share any details yet again, but I know it was a tradition. A priest has unfortunately been communicating someone who had apostatized from the Orthodox Church and became a Catholic, and had been receiving communion at the Catholic Church. And then he decided to go to an Orthodox church recently for a couple of reasons and receive communion. And he hasn't been chrismated back into the faith. And just to put this out there again, if someone apostatizes who was baptized Orthodox, and this kind of get into the matter of baptism, I guess, because it connects, right? Subdeacon, we could say it's related.
It's literally right before we started. There's so much junk going on right now. I just had a lady send me a message. She's not even Orthodox yet. I think she's a catechumen or inquirer. I sent her to St. Anthony's Monastery because the priest wasn't going to baptize her. So I was like, you need to go to St. Anthony's. They'll baptize you. But she sent me a letter. She sent me a message saying, "Is this wrong?" And the story was, there is if I got it correctly, an Antiochian church with an Antiochian priest. A wedding occurred within the church that was officiated by a Baptist pastor in a Baptist ceremony with an Orthodox and heretic spouse. So the priest blessed an Orthodox Christian to marry a non-Orthodox Christian in the confines of the Orthodox building with the Baptist pastor in a Baptist ceremony. What?
Oh, yeah, that's
you don't have to be a canon lawyer to figure this one out.
Right there, that's the defilement of the temple. You can't allow these people in there to do those things. It's yeah, and I mean, like with the situation I was talking about, this guy's been receiving communion. He hasn't been chrismated, and again, it's not rebaptism. If you were baptized Catholic, baptized Protestant, any kind of Protestant, and I get many Protestants who go, "Oh, I'm not a Protestant." Yes, you are. We're meaning you're specifically not Orthodox or Catholic, whether you're Anglican, Lutheran, Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Baptist. It's all part of the Protestant branch. It's like the splinter.
Yeah, I was a Uniate myself. I didn't cover that in my. I was a Uniate, and I was baptized Orthodox. So
there you have it. And he was not rebaptized. I was a Uniate, and before that, I was with the Latins. I was a TLMer before I switched to a Uniate parish. And prior to that, I had been baptized by my father when he had fallen away and became a Protestant, because my dad was born Orthodox, but he had when he met my mom, he had already run away from home at this point and left the faith behind. So when they had me, they raised me Protestant, and then they baptized me when I was like 8 years old. And my dad was filling in as an intern pastor, and I was baptized. And Catholics accepted it, but the Orthodox, no.
Was it what denomination was that originally?
We were part of the Nazarene, so kind of a Baptist-ish, more charismatic kind of group.
So what was the form?
Kind of flitted between Baptist and Pentecostalism a lot of the time, and evangelical. I was raised evangelical.
I had an article coming eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta get on top of my articles too. It's been a little bit lacking for me lately. But
So was
yeah, no,
the Baptist form just single immersion?
which is not
One.
even prescribed as something that's economizable, by the way.
Mhm.
According to the canons, that does not fall under a category of anything economizable. Same
Mhm.
with the pouring. Catholics used to immerse their babies. They don't anymore. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So Subdeacon Nectarios, you heard it. He was a Uniate, but he got baptized, and that's
My
not
father
rebaptism.
Josiah.
You'll hear some very confused lay theologians claiming we don't quote unquote rebaptize, and he's correct when he says this. But we do not see that as rebaptizing because they never received a baptism in the first place. And this is, I think, the confusion that economia being so liberally applied has created. And I think it's really opened the door for this highly contagious wave of ecumenism that has swept through the church.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, Father Theodore up at Jordanville covered this. I mean, that's one thing that the language is not a rebaptism. It's not.
Yeah,
It's not.
and just so you guys know what he's referring to, that's the Light of the World YouTube channel podcast and Father Theodore, I think, was on episode 2.
Yeah. So yeah, go check that out. It was Light of the World. Light of the
Check it
World.
out. I will link it in the description. Check out Light of the World. Subscribe to them, like and share it. I know Father Theodore. I got a chance to meet him when I was ordained, and actually, he was the priest who taught me on my first day of being a priest.
I love Father Theodore. He's
excellent.
I love him. Yeah, I love him. I got a good story that I'll tell you when I see him. It was great from Pascha.
I'm looking forward to hearing it. Maybe we can get Father Theodore to join us for an episode one of these days too.
Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
good.
that's it's getting so, as we can see from that, just that example that I got, that this lady wrote me just like a few hours ago. It's like, you don't have to be a canon lawyer to figure this out. You don't need to have a PhD to figure it out. I mean, if you just crack open this 14th volume here, it lays
And by the way,
everything
those
out.
are free online too, guys. So there's really no excuse for not accessing them. They are online.
Yes, ccell.org/church fathers, I want to say.
Link will be included in the description to that as well.
Yeah.
So, and I'll probably put a little blurb at the start of the video when we publish it, saying links to patristic sources and everything are in the description. It's and I mean, like, even looking at just what modern day saints like Saint Raphael of Brooklyn has said, he's also been is someone you can really look at as being a huge proponent and defender of baptism, even with conditional baptisms. When there's been fear of death for an infant or whatever, and when a parent or a guardian, another Orthodox Christian, has performed a baptism, a conditional baptism, and if the infant survives, if the child survives, and there was no danger of death after all, Saint Raphael says they should go to a priest or a bishop and get baptized. Now, of course, we do know that if the infant passed away, it would have been fine. But it's always better to play it safe. Why? Because the ordained clergy, such as priests and bishops, we can baptize you. We can perform that sacrament. We have that grace and that authority. And it's always better to observe things in full and proper. We show respect for the church when we do this. We show respect for God and for ourselves, really. This is your soul you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a short-term thing.
Yeah.
And that kind of like brings us to another point as well with the ecumenism is, and there's again another good book on this by Alexander Kalamiros, Against False Union. Perfect title, kind of for even for this what we're covering a lot in this podcast is we're putting this out there as well to get the lay people to write to the bishops and say we're concerned. We're concerned about what's happening in 2025. We're concerned for our brothers and sisters. There it is. I got mine. I think I have mine right. Yeah, right here. And you'll notice I'm always taking notes. I'm always taking multiple notes when I read these.
This book
this is from the Nectarios Press, by the way.
Not my press.
not subdeacon Nectarios, but the other Nectarios, the other Saint Nectarios.
They're out of Washington, but that book is phenomenal. I that's on my reading list on my website if you're interested, because I get this message all the time. What books do I read? I have like 10 books on my reading list that'll pretty much give you a traditionalist outlook on things. But yeah, that book right there, and there's a quote in there that I have on my website, and actually have it open. It says,
let's see the quote.
I love this quote. It says, when you reckon one element of tradition as trivial, then at first opportunity you will consider trivial whatever other things you do not like in the tradition.
Mm-hmm. Which again brings us back to that previous point that you get lay people now getting confused, lay theologians, claiming that we don't rebaptize, and again that's true. So it's just again, it's kind of a little reminder. If you or someone has fallen away from the Orthodox Church and is coming back home, at that point you can't get baptized again. If you've received an Orthodox baptism, that's it. We don't repeat the baptism. Ours is the only real one. Only an Orthodox priest or bishop can baptize. And so what has to happen in that case, and unfortunately there has been situations where this doesn't get observed. Usually, in my experience, it's just been due to ignorance of procedure. And this was something I wrote to my bishop about as well, and said, what is the best way to handle someone coming back who is apostatized? And he said it clear as day. He says, well, if they've been baptized, you chrismate them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things.
If they've received an Orthodox baptism, not a heterodox one.
Yeah, that's one thing I get a lot of messages about. Is
it's a serious thing. And there's never been someone I've talked to who's regretted getting baptized, but I've had plenty of messages from people who regret the chrismation, just being chrismated.
Hundreds upon hundreds. I've been Orthodox since 2004, and I've heard that hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of times, especially since I got into I've been in the anti-ecumenist movement, since the baptismal water was dripping off of me, but
purging the heresy from your body.
Yeah, I mean, it was within, I got baptized, and then this was 2004, so that's when really Bartholomew was really persecuting the monks of Esphigmena Monastery, and I was like, just mind blown by that. But that's one of the things that is not so good about being a subdeacon is I get hundreds and hundreds of messages about baptism. Like, could you do it? Sure can't.
Sure can't, unless you're dying and it's just me and you. Then I can. But
but I have a mental list of all the people that will do it. So I mean, that's the one good thing.
And if you're in my neck of the woods, if you're in Ontario, in Canada, and you need to get baptized, let me know.
There's one up there. There's one up there, but he's like you're here, and he's like that's not going to be feasible for me. If you're in southwestern Ontario, I can help you. You're gonna have to drive down there to see him, I guess.
It's going up quite a ways, and a couple provinces over that one, if it's who I think. But and I'd love to. It's just not feasible for me. But that's the thing, guys. Like, don't be afraid to push back on that a little bit. You get told you're being chrismated, push back a little bit on that. Just say why. What's the reason? I'm not. It's not like you're in the desert or you can't physically fit into the baptismal font, that you're disabled and can't lower yourself in there. Then there's no reason for this. There are times where economia can be used as a condescension based on different factors like that. I've given these examples a few times. But a lot of the time, that's not the case. And ultimately, we have to ask, why are they pushing so hard, certain hierarchs, for us to only receive the heterodox via chrismation? It's almost as if they're trying to segue something here. It's almost like they're trying to say, like, hey, we do recognize sacraments outside the church, which we don't. We can't divide the body of Christ like that.
I just got I just got a message from someone on Facebook. I talked to him just recently. His wife was received into the Metropolia, and she was coming from a Protestant background, single immersed. And the priest decided, oh, whatever with the ecumenical councils, second, the Eunomian thing, whatever. It's just a suggestion. And chrismated her anyway. So she was, so-called baptized among these, these Protestants in a single immersion in the name of the Trinity, which that doesn't matter. If the form is, if you don't have the form, out the window.
Yeah.
And they did it anyways.
That's not the form at all. So
they
the
did
form
it
is
anyways.
triple immersion, name of Trinity.
Yeah, so they did it anyways, and now they're like, where do I go to get a, where do I go to get a corrective baptism? I'm like, oh boy.
Well, Jordanville, you can go there. St.
Yeah,
Anthony's
we know where to go.
Monastery. Any of the monasteries are founded by elder or friend that have remained faithful to his teachings.
But it's it's unfortunate that they
Holy
have
Trinity
to actually
does them all the
do
time.
that. Yeah.
It's
unfortunate they even have to do that, though.
Yeah, it's common. They get people that are coming all the time for that. I had a young man reach out to me a long time ago. Great young man. Absolutely love this kid. All my interactions with him have just been beautiful. He had a lot of demonic stuff happening to him, and a lot of terrible things, terrible afflictions. And he was going to Greek Orthodox Church, and they chrismated him when he was received in. I think he might have been Catholic or something. Prior to. And they chrismated him, and he ended up having really, really crazy things happening to him, and he was pretty shaken up by some of it, understandably. And I told him, I said, head to Jordanville, and I think after his second visit, they gave him a corrective baptism and fixed the problem. He feels much better.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go wrong when you're trying to be respectful of the commands of Christ. That is an acceptable defense right there. You're just trying to be obedient to Christ. Be obedient to your bishop, be obedient to your priest, provided they're being obedient to Christ, to the councils, to what the Holy Fathers have taught. If they're being obedient to God's will, then by you being obedient to them, you're doing that too. But if they're going off and saying stupid things, and I'm just going to say it's stupid, like, Origen is a saint, or, or that ecumenical councils aren't infallible, or that, the Cappadocian fathers were Origenists.
Francis of Assisi was a saint.
Yeah, run from those people. Run from them. They are wolves who have come in through the sheepfold by some other way, and as Christ has warned about in the Gospel of John, and they're looking to steal sheep.
Mm-hmm.
These people believe they're right, but they're not. The church doesn't agree with them.
There's a quote from Vladika Luke Jordanville that he said at the conference that I memorized. It was, we do corrective baptisms. We do those too for the patristic reasons that we are allowed to. Metropolitan Philaret allowed them to. Metropolitan Hilarion allowed them. So they get done. So if that's a problem, where to go.
Metropolitan Hilarion, who reposed in the Lord last year, and he did a lot. He did a lot to help people with that issue.
Yes, he did. He did. I've been at a corrective baptism that was, this person needed it. They were just, as Father Theodore was saying in his podcast, it was, when these people are brought in improperly in the church and they're just chrismated, it creates a spiritual crisis within themselves.
Yeah.
And I mean, and everybody's trying to be, these lukewarm clergy that are receiving these people into the church, and these with economy that doesn't meet the presuppositions, they're just doing more harm than good.
Precisely. It's doing great damage, guys. This is no joke. And if there's any priests who are watching this, and if this is something that maybe has been getting at you a little bit, or maybe tugging at your heart, just do the baptism. Just do the baptism. When in doubt, just baptize. Baptize. You're going to cover your bases. You're going to cover the basis for the person coming into the church. There can be no mistake with that. With economia, it's often just so gray and hard to navigate. It's not worth doing it.
and for me specifically is because all the messages I get is, it's always because we're always pressing this issue, and we're always, I'm an anti-ecumenist person because I've been, studying this issue for 21 years now. It's like I can't do anything about it, so I can't do anything for you, and it's really, kind of a burden on me because now I got to find, because I'm not going to turn these people away. Everybody that's asked me, where do I get a baptism? Because my priest wants to chrismate me. Where do I get a corrective baptism? I'll help all of them, and I'll find them. I had a guy that was, he'd been Orthodox for almost 40 years, and he received into the OCA by chrismation. And he said for the last 40 years that has bothered him, and that he knew it was incorrect, because when he was, baptized as a baby, so-called, with the Papists, they would just, here's some water, and so he knew it was. So it's bothered him for 40 years. So I think last I heard, he's going up there to get, getting taken care of. But
glory to God.
It's a real problem.
No, it's a sobering thing to talk about. It's, and that's the thing. It's like, even in another experience I had recently, I had a young man reach out to me because, and he was with the Eastern Catholics. And he was looking into Orthodoxy for a long time, and something happened in his life, a tragedy, and unfortunately, even though this Orthodox priest was well-meaning, was meaning to comfort him, he decided to give this kid Holy Communion, and he wasn't received into the church yet, and that can be deadly. By the way, the previous issue I mentioned with the one person going to an Orthodox church and receiving communion, people forget what St. Paul warned about. And I've heard many of these stories with this happening, with people receiving communion outside of the church. The one in particular I'm thinking of happened, I think, out towards Toronto. But this fellow went to a church and was receiving communion. He was a Catholic, and he got sick. I've heard this. I've heard another story of that recently, where somebody got sick, and there are people who will die from this. St. Paul warns about this in Corinthians. And people seem to just go, oh, don't worry about it. Protestants say, oh, well, the Eucharist is a symbol. Really? Symbols can kill you. And then you'll get the ecumenists are saying, well, they have some grace. It's okay. God loves them. He'll be merciful. Yes, he does love them. He also loves them enough to, if he has to, take their life from them because they're receiving unworthily. It adds up against them. And what a lot of people don't realize is that God will take you at your best.
Yeah, that's
playing with fire. And priests, if someone approaches the chalice and you don't recognize them, you haven't seen them at confession in a long time, whatever, don't give them communion. Pull them aside. Tell them you'll talk to them afterwards. If it's just a matter of they haven't been to confession in a little while, but they've been preparing, they've prepared adequately, then have confession with them and give them communion after. It's fine to play it safe. You can always play it safe with communion. You don't want to play it fast, and that's where I can't fathom is they'll play fast and loose with the rules when it comes to Holy Communion, but when it comes to baptism, the bishop says, "Oh, just chrismate." Yes, sir. Well, Nestorius was someone's bishop once upon a time. Yeah. Would it have been, good to obey him in terms of his blasphemies against our Lord? No.
There was a lot of iconoclastic bishops too. So
yeah, the line has to be drawn. Yeah. So kind of to start kind of moving through and soon to wrap up, because I think we'll just keep the first episode about an hour. With this false union happening in 2025. What do you think, in kind of like with your research of church history and everything that has been going on, what do you think is going to be really crucial to try to help as many people get through this and to remain in the church as possible?
Well, if it does happen, because it's still up in the air, but it's, who knows? Who knows what's going on in the mind of those heretics and Finar? What's going to be crucial is it's the only thing that's going to stop it is the laity is going to stop it. That's it. Because for those who have been properly catechized and they've, heard of the Council of Florence, and they've read anything that has to do with the Council of Florence. It was St. Mark of Ephesus and the laity. That was it. That was the reason that whole false union
All the more
was
reason
ended.
to read.
Yeah, and yet again, this book here, I suggest it's hard to find. It was The History of the Council of Florence, 1971. This book.
Beautiful.
This is the laity are going to be the reason that the laity are the reason that all this is going on, and they're also going to, and it's also going to be the reason that it's going to be solved, because it's just like, if you're just letting things go by, it's the priest business. It's, I'm not who am I,
Yeah.
If you have that attitude, it's just a lot of these bishops, especially these cufflinks, you know who they are, the cufflink bishops that, Bartholomew has a private jet, and you got his other.
But he cares so much about the environment.
Yeah. Green Patriarch with his G4 jet, and anyway, you got Emmanuel out there in Germany, the one where he's in Chalcedon now because he got caught doing a bunch of stuff with whatever, owning 60 Rolexes or whatever. But it's the laity need to really wise up to what's going on. You need to educate yourself. You can't just rely on your your Wednesday night catechism class to your 1 hour a day, 1 day a week. That's not enough. I mean,
no.
To be Orthodox,
we're not just on things like this show either. You can't rely on just us. You can't rely on just one thing. You got to really get out there and read what the fathers have taught yourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is not easy. It's not easy to pour through all these things. It's not. But if you really want to know what's going on, if you really want to prevent all this stuff that's going on, it's going to be the laity that need to rise up and be the confessors. Yeah, you're going to get persecuted. Yeah, you're going to lose friends. I mean, I experience that daily. It's like, I don't get talked too much around my circles.
No, I mean, becoming a priest, I lost a lot as well.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, when you're pursuing truth, the friends that will remain with you are the ones who desire it as well. And they're going to help you. They're going to serve God with you. And if you've got a good group of friends, that you go to church with, and you're all wanting to fight for the tradition, write your bishops, tell them what you're concerned about. They have to be accountable. They're there to serve you. The higher up you go, the more of a servant you become. This is my burden. This is the weight of my office, and it reminds me that I also have to serve you guys. I have to be willing to crucify myself for it. Wearing the cassock, you're just painting a target on your back. Mm-hmm. Both for people to reach out for you and against you. So, if any of you are in that position where you are wearing a cassock or a cross, doesn't matter. Be responsible and make sure you're also well read on these things. There's a lot they're never going to teach you in seminary. They don't have the time to cover it all, but they can point you in the right direction. And we'll do our best to do that too here on this podcast. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good start in listening to people who know what they're talking about. Not saying I do, but
and I'm not saying I do either.
Father Peter, Orthodox Ethos, Father Josiah, Patristic Nectar, Father Spirit on Bailey at his channel. I mean, there's a select there's a select few that, they're confessors of the faith. They're maintaining the patristic tradition. That's what you need to look for. But then outside of that, you have to actually dive in to your books. You need to be in the scriptures. I mean, that especially in the New Testament. That is, when a Protestant can cite the New Testament better than you can, and that's our book, that's a problem.
That's a problem for us.
Big problem. We wrote it. We wrote it. We canonized it. And they're gonna say they know better than us. I don't think so. Yeah. That's Father Josiah would say. And I wrote an article about that. I mean, start there. Look at the New Testament, what they said, what the apostles said about heresy. Just as an example, I wrote that article, what the New Testament says about heresy. There's 10 of the books, or 11 of the books are entirely about heresy.
Yeah. It's not a new problem. It's just a more widespread problem now. But it's nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. So, you guys have to read. You have to inform yourselves. You have to write to your bishops, talk to your priests. If something's happening at your parish where you don't feel like the spiritual care is what you need, talk to your priest. Don't just up and leave. Nothing will get better doing that. Only go somewhere else if there is no change. If after multiple attempts, nothing happens. Be patient. Priests have a lot of pressure. They're human too. But don't stay long. Don't put up with this stuff for long. The longer you put up with it, the more prevalent it'll become. It won't go away. If you really want to fix the church, start with fixing yourself. And
no, sorry. I got that question twice today. They see my post on Instagram. If you want, my Instagram.
Check out Traditionalist Orthodox on Instagram.
Orthodox Traditionalist, yeah.
Orthodox
I forgot what my thing was.
Backwards.
Yeah, I like sharing stories, but I had two people. I just shared, something about the heresiarch Bartholomew and the Pope. They're two ladies. They're like, how do we stop this? I was like, you are going to be the one to stop it. It's got to be you. It's like, stop. If you're in the, we have differing opinions. Some people have different opinions on that. Don't go to ecumenical patriarchate churches. If you're in the EP, if you're in a Goar church, don't go there. Leave. Don't give them your money. If you're in the Carpatho-Russian, sorry, don't go there. Leave.
And it's not to say that those of us in other patriarchates don't have our own problems. That would be probably a video for another day.
We have our problems. We covered that at the beginning.
But let's look at what, really the big problem with Patriarch Bartholomew. He granted a tomos of autocephaly to a schismatic organization that was in all reality started by the former Ukrainian president Zelensky. And I called it when I saw it. I said, this is going to be a propaganda arm. And sure enough, look what's happening. And yet you'll get groups of bishops, supposedly, who never signed certain letters, attacking Father Peter for traditional teaching, but they won't speak up for Metropolitan Philaret. They won't speak up for what's happening to the legitimate canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Why? Because they stand against the ecumenism. They stand against this agenda that is going on with some of these people. And why would they want to, support someone who is, in all reality, their enemy?
Mm-hmm.
So why are we letting them get away with it? Where's the outcry about that? Where's the calling to accountability when it comes to bishops not paying attention to what's happening in Ukraine? I feel like the ROCOR bishops have been the only ones even saying anything about it.
Yep.
I feel like ROCOR has been the only one really defending Metropolitan Philaret as hard as it has. The OC did a little bit, but it's been pretty quiet on that front lately.
Yeah. That Ukrainian issue, that's a whole different episode, but just, that just in a brief thought, these Ukrainian heretics, they're not even schismatics, they're heretics, they're unordained. They're not even Orthodox. They're
cosplaying as Orthodox.
LARPing, I guess, is the term nowadays, right? Yeah. But these Oku schismatic heretics, they're literally, you can do a Google search and go on orthochristian.com. Yeah. They're already openly and frequently serving their liturgies, their so-called liturgies, with Roman Catholics. Meeting out of the same chalice.
I haven't been able to verify it, but didn't they also on their website recently say that that they're okay with the Filial or something like that?
Yeah, there was something in an article there. The Filial is not a problem, which Athenagoras, Patriarch Athenagoras said that in 1970. I just read Father Theodore Zisi's an article, one of his sermon from 2017 on Sunday of Orthodoxy, which was coming soon. Brilliant, amazing. But they're Filioque, not a problem. I think they have the option to use a new calendar now. So not only they're accepting of papist heretical doctrines like the Filioque, they're open to the new calendar's innovation, and they're the worst of all. It's not a real liturgy anyways, but the symbolism is just striking, that they're openly serving with, Latin papists and Uniate papists as it is now. So I mean,
Precisely.
and then Bartholomew and his ilk and Bartholomew and company are all communing with them. So it's just
Yeah.
that's
What demonic, honestly, demonic nonsense. And that's where I'll give the final book plug of the night. We mentioned him earlier, Metropolitan Philaret, New York. Pick this up. Holy Trinity bookstore in Jordanville is carrying the book, which was translated, I believe, or edited by this guy, by Subdeacon Nectarios, right there.
Yeah,
right on the camera as best as I can get it. Honestly, this book's incredible. It is reading the life of a saint. He is a saint. So there's a huge move and petition to canonize him. And even just his defense of the faith is striking. How he says, we observe, however, that nobody in a higher position than our own is raising his voice, and this fact constrains us to speak out, lest at the last judgment we should be reproached for having seen the danger of ecumenism threaten the church, and yet not having warned her bishops. To be sure, we have already addressed His Holiness Patriarch Athenagoras and His Eminence Archbishop Iakovos of North and South America, expressing our grief and concern over their ecumenical activities, in which the birthright of the church has been sold for a mess of pottage in the form of the world's applause. You'd swear he was talking about what's happening today. Highly relevant.
And that's why his relics are incorrupt, lying at Jordanville underneath the altar.
I believe that they said that he looks like he has a golden hue to his relics. And if you guys, which I hope all of you on here subscribe to Orthodox Talks as well and listen to Father Cosmos, we all love him. He talked about that in one of his recent talks, that the relics of saints, they look kind of gold. The skin takes on a golden hue, or the bones do, if it's the bones that are remaining. And Metropolitan Philaret is incorrupt. Well, this is a saint saying these things, and he's not the only one. He's not some lone voice. He is sound in what he's saying. There is one Christ. There's one bride, one church. Christ is not a polygamist with a bunch of schizophrenic brides who can't agree on what the Holy Spirit's revealing to them. Let me convey that point again. The church is not schizophrenic. It shouldn't be. And so, when you got these lay theologians running around talking like they're the authority of the church, or when you've got, nuns running around and breaking apostolic canons and the canons of the church, run from these people. Run from them. You don't have time to waste on it. The time is little. The time to act is now.
That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said in that book. And what's good about that book is I'm working on the second edition for it right now. So, quick story. I was at work and it was a downtime, and I had found 72 audio recordings of St. Philaret's homilies on some random. Oh, hold on. Oh, sorry, Father Peter called me. I had some random on some random website, some random Russian website, some priest out in the middle of the village somewhere recorded all of Metropolitan Philaret's homilies. He had like 72 of them, uploaded them to a website. I found them. I have them all, and I'm working on getting them transcribed and translated. It's going to cost a pretty penny, but and the stuff that he has is invaluable. The things that he says is entirely prophetic. It's crazy.
Well, keep Subdeacon Nectarios in your prayers and his endeavors. So I think we'll begin to wrap up now. Is there anything in closing that you would like to say, Subdeacon, before we close up our first episode?
Just we touched on this point a few times. You have to take responsibility for your own orthodoxy. You cannot rely on the clergy. You can't rely on us just because we wear black to teach you the right things. You need to really take root of your own orthodoxy, be responsible for your own learning. That's because if you want to stop all this crazy stuff that's going around, if all this crazy stuff is going on, but you haven't educated yourself and you haven't been reading the lives of the saints and reading the church fathers and reading the canons, you're not going to recognize it. You're not going to recognize this stuff when you see it. So take the time, invest in yourself, learn the fathers, read the lives of the saints. Like Father Peter said in a podcast a few years ago, if you don't have a book of the lives of the saints at your bed table, there's a problem. So
totally agree.
Start
even if all you
reading.
can read is a couple pages before you turn in, you're still going to get something out of it.
Yep.
Always have a copy of the Lives of Saints by your bedside, or A Life of a Saint, and always have this under your pillow. Always be ready. You don't want to be caught unawares. And it's like Father Josiah said, and this is what I'd like to close with. Father Josiah tried to point out something beautiful when he said, just because your catechumenate ends doesn't mean you stop being a catechumen. It doesn't mean you stop learning. You have to keep learning. You are responsible for that. Yes, there is obedience, especially when it comes to your spiritual care. But when it comes to your maturity, to your growth, to the spiritual nutrition that you need to receive outside of the sacraments, you got to pick it up and feed yourself.
Yeah. Even myself, I'm going back to, even though I have a master's degree, I'm doing the certificate for theological studies at Jordanville in the fall. So
there it is, guys. So this was the first episode of, hopefully, God willing, to be many podcasts. I think we're going to try to commit to a bi-weekly to once a month release. We're going to be getting into it, trying to research our topics as well as we can as we progress. This is something we're both very familiar with because we've both done a lot of fighting against this for a while, especially Subdeacon Nectarios. And, of course, as other books and resources become available in English and come out, whether it's Uncut Mountain Press or in other good publishers that are Orthodox, we're also going to try to cover that here. And just to get you guys interested, to get you guys looking in the right direction, the right place. Again, links in the description will be provided to both Orthodox Traditionalist and of course, to the library of patristic writings that is available online, which is everything you see behind Subdeacon Nectarios there, you can read for free.
Yep.
So we're going to include a link to that. And if Subdeacon feels so inclined to have a specific recommendation, I'll also include the links to that specific recommended text. And you guys can go through. You can certainly read the canons of the Holy Fathers by doing this. It's all free. It's all out there. There's no excuse. Inform yourself. Say your prayers, and God be with you all. Have a wonderful night. Christ is risen.
Truly is risen.